think if you go into any big project where it's hard, and unless it's going to be really difficult to achieve the goal at the end of the day, be it the prize or whatever, it's not worth going into. If it's going to be really hard and maybe almost put into the impossible bracket, then it's worth going for.
International sport's oldest prize leaves the United States, this time to a different down under, New Zealand.
The most wonderful sound I've ever heard in my life. That gun at the finish means we've done the impossible. We've won the America's Cup. Fantastic.
Culmination of my career.
It was one of the greatest days in New Zealand's history. The country unified and euphoric like never before, after Team New Zealand finally conquered yachting's Everest. New Zealand's first challenge for the America's Cup was with KZ7 off Fremantle in 86-87. A year later, Sir Michael Fahey challenged the San Diego Yacht Club with his controversial big boat KZ1. In 1992, NZL 20 carried New Zealand's hopes into the America's Cup, and Peter Blake first became involved in New Zealand's quest of the old mug.
At the end of the 1992 challenge with Michael Fahey, I really hadn't enjoyed my time, I don't think, in San Diego. Not in the way that I should have. I thought it was we could have done better, but not in the latter stages. The doing better had to be sorted out right at the start of the project. But I also thought the whole thing was a yachting contest. There's nothing more than that. Now people make the America's Cup into some grandiose project that it doesn't need to be made into. So I thought if we approached it the right way, we actually did have a very good chance of winning it.
Over the previous 15 years, Peter Blake had established an outstanding reputation winning major ocean races. His style of campaign management and charismatic leadership was the reason he was encouraged to spearhead the Team New Zealand Challenge.
Once we'd taken the decision that we should at least give it a good old try, and had gone back to New Zealand and saw that yes, there would be support for it, provided it was properly done and provided it was led by Peter Blake. I think Peter got very enthusiastic, and I mean, it's quite a battle for him to take on Pippa and get her to let him spend 75,000 out of the domestic budget. So that's how serious it was.
I had a phone call from Alan saying, look, we're approaching the deadline for getting our deposit in, and where are we going to get it from? And of course, there's only one way we were going to get it, and that was for me to part personally. Quite a big call. Luckily, caught me in a good mood.
After the decision was made to launch a new challenge for America's Cup 95, Blake and close associates Alan Sefton and Ross Blackman called a meeting of the movers and shakers in New Zealand yachting.
We had a meeting, Alan and I and Ross organised a meeting in Auckland and invited quite a few people to that meeting whose opinion we valued. They might be key sailmakers, boat builders, riggers, people in the industry to come along and hear our ideas. And we outlined the way we thought Team New Zealand should put its America's Cup campaign together. What do all you guys think about that? And it was pretty unanimous. That's the way to do it.
Reassured the philosophy they had set to win was strongly supported, Blake then faced the key decision of who would skipper the boat. In the end, it came down to Chris Dixon, who had skippered KZ7 in Fremantle, Rod Davis, skipper of New Zealand's 92 Challenger, and Russell Coutts, the world match racing champion.
It was unanimous, absolutely unanimous, Russell, because of his personality, his his expertise, the way he gets on with people, and the fact that he probably would take it and give it a good hard shake and really get what he wanted out of it. The skipper had to be involved in all the key decisions to do with the boat and the trial program and the sail program. Everything else he had to know all about it. It had to be his. And so we approached Russell, and after a bit of talking, he came on board.
When I got the opportunity to sail for New Zealand, it was in a much bigger role than any other opportunity that was currently available at that stage. It looked as though it was going to be put together in the right way, and it was going to be a bit of fun to do, which I think was important.
Bill Koch's America Cube syndicate dominated the 1992 America's Cup, redefining the way to win. Russell Coote was adamant that Team New Zealand should take a close look at the American successful defence.
Bill Koch was syndicate head that won the thing in 1992, and there was a lot of positive talk about him, a lot of negative talk, so one of us had to go down there and see him and just find out how they put the thing together from his perspective. It was very, very interesting.
After the last Cup, he came down and saw me in Florida. We spent about 4 or 5 hours together, and I like his philosophy.
The feeling was mutual, and Coots was soon sharing his enthusiasm for Bill Koch's approach with fellow teammates back in New Zealand.
It impressed Coots so much, actually, and then he impressed it upon us. We were sort of cruising along our good old New Zealand way, and Russell was convinced that the way America 3 did it was correct. The team technology approach.
While the team finalised design details, Blake was faced with the daunting task of securing sponsorship from corporate New Zealand. With initial funding in place, there were still some tense moments as critical deadlines approached.
Things came to a head a couple of days before the nationality dates came into effect, where everybody had to basically be in the country of residence by the state. So Pete had to come up with some money by the state to ensure that he could keep people like Russell Coote and Doug Peterson. And this was on a particular Friday.
And all of a sudden it came down to that one day where this person said yes or no whether we were going to go ahead or not. And I said, well, we've got to go ahead, this is ridiculous.
And come 5:30 on that Friday night, we were still sitting around the table, still waiting for that telephone call. And I mean, this was 5:30 on a Friday night. We've been working for months and months without pay. And in half an hour, the whole thing was going to, that day, if we didn't get a yes that night, the whole thing was going to fall over. So, and Blake was going to fly back to England, that was the end of it. And finally, about 6:30, the phone rang, and we all tried to pick it up at once, and all desperately quiet while Pete talked to somebody on the phone. And finally, yes, he got this yes. And all of a sudden, we're on. The whole Team New Zealand thing was away, and one phone call late on a Friday night, and all of a sudden we had some money coming. Yes, we were going to get paid. Yes, we could get Russell Coote and Doug Peterson, and yes, the America's Cup was on. It was a pretty important phone call.
Now, with some sponsors' money available, attention moved to the process of designing a winning boat. Based on past experience, the Team New Zealand Brains Trust placed a lot of importance on getting the concept of the boat design right.
One of the very early decisions we made was that we did not want to go down the wrong track. So we come back to get the concept right, the style of boat, got to be right, or you're not going to win the America's Cup.
We were very early to realise our limitations, and the fact that we planned our design program right from the beginning meant that we didn't waste any time. We've looked around at what other people are doing. We sense that some of the other syndicates are still operating on a kind of a blue sky approach, like cover every base, overturn every stone to see if there's something hidden underneath it. Whereas we've said, well, there isn't time to do that. If you're going to turn up all the stones around, then you'll only get half of them uncovered.
Tom Snackenberg was chosen to lead and coordinate Team New Zealand's design team, with Laurie Davidson and Doug Peterson as the primary designers.
Yeah, but what about the thing where about the winches can be in the cockpit? They either have to be on the deck or...
Their main challenge was the dimensions and hull shape that Black Magic would take to fit within the International America's Cup class rule. David Egan, a computational fluid dynamics expert, returned home to New Zealand after working in the American aerospace industry. By utilising highly sophisticated computer codes, Egan was able to greatly increase the efficiency of the design process. Keels and the appendages were also a very important part of the design process and the responsibility of Richard Kahn, who had been in the KZ-17 and was designer of the revolutionary canoe pods for the 1988 Olympics.
The principle used there was simply of just looking at the problem in a fresh way. And that's what I try to do with my America's Cup work as well, is rather than just look at what's been done before and just study everyone else's designs, is that you want to go away and have a clear think and pull out a clean sheet of paper and just look at the whole solution to the problem in a totally fresh and clean sort of a way.
It wasn't just the designers sitting in their little office. We gathered about 15 or 20 of us around a table in our upstairs meeting room and thrashed it out. Sometimes having quite a few people talk about a subject is quite difficult. And a lot of time there was no real management process as far as the way that these meetings were run. They just was a cross-table discussion, but the end result worked out pretty well.
America's Cup is too complicated a thing to just, send one or two people out to design it or sail it or organize it or whatever. It's just far too complicated to use that sort of method.
One of the biggest breakthroughs perhaps in the design of the hull was with Laurie Davidson, who doesn't even use a computer, but he's got an eye for a boat, and he said, well, I think this would be better, and he draws it out on a piece of paper, and he has his lead naval architecture ducks there holding the batten in place, and he sights down it and gets other people to come and have a look. What do you reckon about this? Draws the lines, and he stands and looks at the piece of paper, and that's what's been important. I believe people with a huge background of experience on the design side.
Right from the start, this was a sailor-driven campaign, and this time the crew was encouraged to give input into the type of boat they wanted.
Well, the guys discussed it a lot, and we obviously, from the problems we've had before, wanted a boat that wasn't going to cause any protest problems, didn't have a bowsprit or anything controversial on it.
At some stage in the 3 previous New Zealand challenges, the Kiwis had been drawn into controversy. Designer Bruce Farr had been a key player in all of New Zealand's previous challenges, but for 1995 he was not involved with Team New Zealand.
We just didn't really agree on how the project was going to go together, and I stuck to my guns.
So did he, though?
Fine, but he hadn't won the America's Cup. Doug Peterson had. And I think we wanted to have this very open approach that I think was important. And, I don't particularly like being told that my management approach, i.e. the setup of the campaign, was going to get a D. Oh no, maybe an E for concept. I didn't think we were going to get on too well at that point.
With the foundations of management and design firmly in place, Blake put to sea once more on Ends in New Zealand for the Jules Verne Trophy, this time to set a new world record. Even though he was thousands of miles away, Blake kept in daily contact with the team back in New Zealand. But Blake was not the only one at sea. Many of Black Magic's crew were also away competing in the Whitbread. Russell Coutts had the responsibility to select the crew he would race with in the America's Cup, and he opted for a balance of highly experienced Whitbread and Olympic-class sailors with compatibility as the common thread. While many of the crew were honing their skills on the high seas, the first of Team New Zealand's 2 new boats was under construction at the McMillan and Wing Boatyard in Auckland. Built out of high-tech carbon fibre, the boat builders were bringing into life the result of all the planning and experimenting the team had spent months working on.
To see these guys in the Lion Nathan building, this beautiful carpeted area, with lumps of timber. There's raw meat and Gero and a few others, and this whole deck mock-up of how the deck's going to be in the cockpits and where the winches are and getting the layouts right. So suddenly it's their boat. The guys on the grinders, the grinders in the position that they want, not what the designer maybe thinks they should be. And up here is as important as anything else.
As the first boat neared completion, Team New Zealand turned to New Zealand's sporting tradition and painted the hull black. Black Magic was born.
I think it was very important, and I raised this issue with the sponsors on a number of occasions. It's very important to have the guys on a boat that they want. You know, the boat has to be the colour that they want, the deck colour has to be what they want. There mustn't be any stresses in there. Oh, I don't like saying this bloody thing because it's bright purple or something. Black. They're all New Zealanders. They want to do well.
But the public still weren't able to get a glimpse of the striking black hull, shrouded in secrecy on its maiden voyage to Auckland's Viaduct Basin for the official launching. Finally, Black Magic was officially christened.
May God bless us, all those who sail.
When the covers were first lowered to reveal Black Magic's striking livery, another surprise holding to New Zealand's sporting tradition, the silver fern. The following day, the team wasted no time in preparing Black Magic for its first sail. The crew had to start early before the wind became too strong. With NZL20, New Zealand's challenger from the 1992 America's Cup, as a trial horse, Team New Zealand had a valuable yardstick to gauge their performance in the long grind of two-boat testing.
What do you want them to put up?
Well, they'll have to go with a G1 or G2. G2. So just get them to put up their fastest Jenny.
Yeah. Right.
Tell them it's test 1 in conjunction with test 20.
Yeah, if you could put up your fastest Jenica, it's a combination of test 1 and test 20.
When Black Magic lined up against NZL20 for the first time, the laser rangefinder was working overtime, measuring the relative gains and losses as the two boats sailed downwind under Jenicas. The huge light-air sails were trimmed with the intensity of an America's Cup race as the old and new squared off. The big question, the relative performance of the two boats. It soon became apparent that Black Magic had a significant speed edge over its predecessor on the downwind legs. The next question was how would they compare when sailing to windward?
That's pretty similar, isn't it? Okay, let's go. Okay, testing, guys.
Any doubts about the new boat's upwind performance were soon erased. Black Magic also had a considerable edge over NZL20 to windward. After many months of planning and preparation, Blake and his team were delighted with their new boat.
As soon as we started sailing against NZL20, we thought, aha, we actually do have a chance, but we don't know how the rest of the world's gone, so we just won't say anything. We'll in fact have the opposite mode. We're going to the opposite mode of saying it's all right and we've got a few things to do and maybe our first boat isn't as quick as it should be.
It was incredibly exciting at the time, and I can remember getting the guys together in the container afterwards and just saying that we must keep the lid on its performance, you know. In actual fact, there were plenty of rumours going around town that 32 was getting beaten up by 20, and that was just fine.
There have been a lot of rumours about whether their Black Beast could actually be a dog, the common term for a sluggish boat. In fact, overseas, it's been nicknamed the Black Labrador. Some reports say that New Zealand 20, the red boat from the last America's Cup, has been beating the black boat in trials. Other reports suggested the red boat was going to be painted black and shipped to San Diego instead of the new ones.
We couldn't believe it. I honestly could not believe it. I mean, you come in from sailing and you'd be out there and most of the time I was sailing NZL20 and Russell was on 32. And I was the one taking the hiding. And you come in and you hear guys say, oh, so I hear you guys are beating up on the new boat, 32. I'm going, I just couldn't understand how they could read that into it.
Someone phoned up one of the paint manufacturers who we were dealing with at the time and said, look, this is not, you're not allowed to tell anybody at all. You've got to stay totally confidential. We want to buy some black paint because we think we're going to have to paint NZL20. Within half an hour, that was around town as well.
But the reality was that Black Magic was very fast and Blake had good news for his sponsors.
What was great was to be able to go to them and say, I remember it well, boys, we have ourselves a rocket ship.
While NZL32 was proving to be everything the crew had hoped for, strong winds were working against them.
Gotta go outboard here, guys. They're on target. Come on, Warwick, talk to them. The whole main's inside out, Simon. Copy that.
Just wait till we get a little lull.
That's too much breeze.
There's more coming quite quickly.
Black Magic was purpose-built for sailing in San Diego's light winds. In the blustery conditions, Coots and his world-class crew had their hands full. With precious days on the water being lost because the wind was too strong, Black Magic often returned back to the dock early. For Blake and his team, the slow progress was frustrating as day after day was lost to the elements.
Gusting 40 by midday.
But easing to 30 in hail and rain.
Hail and rain?
Whenever they were confined to the shore, the team made the most of the opportunity to build their fitness and strength for the grueling months to come. But not everyone was into intensive weight training.
Well, Russell has said that as navigator, my physical requirements are to be able to get on and get off without straining myself and not to have a heart attack. So I'm working towards that goal.
What Tom Snackenberg may have lacked in strength, he more than made up for with intellectual agility. The sail designer for Australia 2's historic America's Cup victory, Snackenberg masterminded the revolutionary wind tunnel as a cost-effective way of testing the all-important sail designs.
Well, it's helped us a lot to cover a large number of sails. We've made over 100 sails now, and our actual sail program for full-size sails is only about 20 or 30, and we haven't even started yet. So we'll have several hundred. So to that extent, it helps us an enormous amount compared with the past. We can do all sorts of things that are just little ideas, half of which don't work. In fact, you could say 80% of them don't work. And normally that would be fatal and very, very expensive. But in our case, we can cover a whole range, and it's a great deal of fun.
While sail development continued in the wind tunnel and NZL-32 was being put through its paces on the Hauraki Gulf, the second of Team New Zealand's new boats was nearing completion in the boatyard. Designer Laurie Davidson, ever the craftsman, was putting the finishing touches on NZL-38.
So if we carve that off, it's a matter of having to put a piece inside to back up whatever carving away that we do. Wouldn't be a very big bit. It's only an aesthetic thing. It's not going to make any difference to the performance of the boat.
As soon as construction of NZL-38 was completed, it was sheathed in white plastic and transported to the waterfront to join sister ship NZL-32 for the first time. Anxious eyes watched the black boats lifted onto the container ship bound for San Diego and the America's Cup. An advance guard from Team New Zealand had travelled to San Diego early to establish their compound and prepare for the two black boats. Within 2 days of their arrival, the black sister ships were rigged and ready to be towed out of the harbour for their first trial in the waters off San Diego's Point Loma. Then skipper Russell Coutts announced what proved to be a masterstroke by inviting the boss to join Team New Zealand's first 16.
In the end, I think, and it was Russell's call along with Brad and a few others discussed it, it was a very good call, I think. Not for my expertise as being a main sheet traveller trimmer, because other people can do that. Other people can grind winches as well or better than I'll grind a winch. But it was part of the whole project. So you really had to say what's best for the project, and I think they did it extremely well in that respect.
You know, the opportunity come up to have Peter on board the yacht. At that stage, I felt that we were missing that a little bit of a link there. And as soon as he came on board, it made a big difference because he was there. You know, he could see what was going on a daily basis. He could see what was important from the funding point of view.
Yeah, he was on the Traveller, and I mean, one of the first things that got changed when we got on the boat, we got a new Traveller, because that never worked very well from day one. But there's never a problem finding the money for a new Traveller car.
Productivity had often been stalled by the weather back in Auckland, but the testing program shifted into top gear in San Diego. Long days were spent testing the relative speeds of the two Black Magics. The value of Team New Zealand's two-boat program was paying dividends.
Take two boats out sailing, and they're nearly identical, so you know where their slight differences are, but they're so close to being identical that the average person couldn't pick it. And you make a change to one of the boats. It might be to the wings on the keel, it might be to a sail. You then do a test for 10 minutes. Look at the numbers, look at which boats won, note it down. Do a test, another 10 minutes. And this goes on day after day after day after day after day.
Will's going forward, Will's.
90% of the guys' time out in the water is doing tests. And then if something works really well, it happens each time, put a tick beside that as being an improvement. If you've only got one boat, how can you actually go out there and say, well, this sail's faster than that sail? You wouldn't have the slightest idea. Are wings better or not? You wouldn't have the slightest idea. Are rudder wings better? No one would know. You'd be kidding yourself.
But the New Zealanders weren't kidding. They squeezed every minute out of the days available as they raced against time to prepare for the fast-approaching Challenger Series. On the eve of the first race, the crew returned to the dock ready for their first real test.
Things being tough now, you ain't seeing nothing, okay? It's going to get tough mentally and physically. There's going to be some dirt thrown. You stand by for the dirt that's going to be chucked around. And you think, oh no, it will, by the other teams, and we mustn't react. Don't let it worry you. Sometimes you'll feel pretty uptight, grumpy, pissed off. Don't let it worry you. You just got to remember, it's part of the game. I think we should all, me, anyone here, be happy to do any job around here, whether it's vacuuming this floor, whether it's helping tie the covers on the boats, anything at all, making the tea for the guys, going to get them the lunches as Phil does, anything at all, it still helps win the America's Cup, doesn't matter what it is. So we mustn't think that we're above or below anything, please. This campaign is not a 9-to-5 situation. It's a win the America's Cup. And I'm not interested in winning the Louis Vuitton Cup. When I say me, I mean us, of course. And not winning the America's Cup. I think it would be very nice, we'd all feel very good about it, but really taking that piece of silver back to New Zealand with everything it's going to mean to New Zealand is what we're after. And everything it's going to mean to all of us. Second really doesn't count. We're about to go up against the best in the world. We do have the ability to beat them all, a whole damn lot of them. So we've come a long way, and I think we have a fantastic team in everybody here. I really do. I wouldn't be saying it otherwise. It's got the right feeling about it. We have the chance to win, and I think we must make the absolute most of it, or we're never going to forgive ourselves. So what we have to do at the end of the day, we have to put a hand in our hearts and say, I gave it my absolute best. Please.
So must be Team New Zealand, Russell Coutts. If nothing is wrong, should be A. This is Russell Coutts against Peter Pedro Campos.
January 14, 1995, race 1, round robin 1 of the Louis Vuitton Cup Challenger Series. And for Team New Zealand, at last, it's time to go racing. All of their two-boat testing had indicated that their black boats were something special. But it was not until they went racing that they would know for sure. The team had made the decision to start their road to the America's Cup with NZL 38. Any nagging doubts Coutts and his crew may have had about the relative speed of their boat were dispelled when they comfortably won all of their first round matches. But then, Kiwi ingenuity was under scrutiny as Team New Zealand was under attack. The practice of hoisting Murray Jones up the mast to look for wind was another innovative concept.
We were actually doing it in Wellington when we sailed one of those ISCC regattas down there against the French. The idea was I was going to go up the top of the mast and have a look around in the 10 minutes prior to the start and figure out which was the best side of the first beat to go up. And yeah, we just found it worked really well.
But other syndicates didn't share the Kiwis' enthusiasm for the practice, and Jones had to defend himself, centre stage in front of the international media.
There's a lot of things that, you know, I'm looking at up there, and I can see some wind, but one of the main reasons is honestly mainly the downwind sailing for the battens and the Jenica. I have to clear that. I'm the lightest person on the boat. That's a major reason why I'm spending a lot of time up there. I'm trying to eat as much as I can.
John Bertrand's One Australia crew didn't appreciate Jones's laconic Kiwi humour and successfully protested the New Zealanders. Despite the setback, there were signs of a more mature attitude from Team New Zealand towards the jousting ashore that has become part of the America's Cup.
To have it go against you, or a rule be ruled against you on something that's obviously forward-thinking and logical, it just doesn't seem right. But nowadays we sort of shrug that off and get on with the job and know that we're going to beat them in the next round or beat them in the next race, and you know, we don't take it as badly as we used to.
And beating them was exactly what they did. NZL 38 bounced back to continue their domination through the next two rounds. After 3 rounds of racing, NZL 38 was still unbeaten on the water, yet Team New Zealand still had an ace up their sleeve. A faster boat, NZL 32.
We thought our 38 was going to be just fine and we'd have a run for 1 round. When we got to the end of the round, we thought, well, that's pretty good. We'll let it have our run for another round. And so it went on, and we couldn't believe how far down the track we got with it.
I think even before 38 was launched, we knew that 32 was, you know, as far as all the boats that they tested, that one had come out really well. And, you know, 38 had her modes, but and had her times and conditions and that, but generally all round 32 was a much, much better boat. And so the group just made that decision, and I think that was a pretty good psychological thing to do, to be able to retire 38 unbeaten and then bring out a new one. It was a pretty, you know, cheeky almost, but that was a good feeling to be able to do that.
During a boisterous race in round robin 4 of the Louis Vuitton Challenger Series, Team New Zealand was ringside to the most dramatic incident in the history of the America's Cup. For the New Zealand crew, it was a sobering experience.
I mean, I think I spotted it first and said, oh, we thought, and Brad was sitting down to leeward, and he said, oh, I've broken the forestay. I said, no, the boat's broken. And the boat's broken, and we could really see it broken, and the first thing you think about is obviously the safety of the crew. And you're hoping that there aren't guys downstairs packing sails, or and there's hopefully the guys aren't hurt where it breaks.
One of the things I can remember about being on the boat right at that time is that the guys who'd done Whitbreads and that, they were sort of the most shocked guys, because they just looked at it and thought, jeepers, you know, that can happen pretty quickly, you know, and they think about what could happen during a Whitbread race when there's no boats around to help you.
We were just in a state of shock, really. We just couldn't believe it. fact, we had to convince Joey, was down below packing a spinnaker. He popped out and had a look under, and he said, "Oh, geez, we're doing pretty well. Can't see the Australians." And it took us the rest of the day to convince him that they'd actually sunk. He wouldn't believe it. But so we're all in a bit of shock. In fact, we had to take him back and show him the video back at dock to convince him.
For Blackmagic's tactician, one Australia's demise was destiny.
They were, you know, incredibly forceful in the way that they manoeuvred around building 3 boats when everybody else had 2. And, you know, we were very aggressive against them in those days to make sure that they stuck to the rules, or tried to make them stick to the rules, which they didn't. And, you know, it's sort of like when that boat sunk, it was like a higher power had said, well, you're not meant to have that boat anyway, so you can't have it.
Although the Australians carried on from their devastating setback and stayed in the competition, the Blackmagic juggernaut continued to dominate the round robins and semi-finals and stay #1 in the fleet. Team New Zealand had an edge in boat speed, and the crew were enhancing their reputation as one of the 2 best in the competition. Team New Zealand's strength was the depth of talent amongst the crew that included design coordinator Tom Snackenberg.
The main strength perhaps that Tom brings is that we can leave most of the computers on shore. Tom does most of it in his head, rather than having to rely upon the nefarious information from a computer, which is only as good as the program that went into it in the first place. You know, a human mind is 10 times as good, really, and Tom's is like a good supercomputer.
Right now, we're actually pressured and we're just going like this on them on bearing, you know?
Head of the tactical team was America's Cup and Whitbread veteran Brad Butterworth, who was quick to credit his colleagues.
The tactical side with which side of the course we wanted and the wind shifts and the wind itself, Murray Jones and Richard Dodson were, you know, the prime chiefs of that department. And again, you probably didn't hear a lot of what they said, but you know, I think they had a perfect regatta in my mind. You know, just the 2 of them worked out things that were, you know, they were right 99.9% of the time.
Richard Dodson and Murray Jones in the afterguard, who were the eyes on the water, giving it to Brad Butterworth. Absolutely brilliant.
I guess the tacticians, they live in, I guess, fantasy land. They can make decisions on what they think's right. The navigator, on the other hand, has got to feed what is actually happening, and he's got to be pretty damn sure of his facts when he's giving an opinion on what may be happening. So his is he's more dealing in facts. The tacticians are dealing in fantasy.
He's right. We've got to. I mean, Tom is the factual man, and we're the guessers. And you're hoping you guess it more than if you get a good guess rate, you've done a good job.
But it was not all guesswork. One of the key factors in Blackmagic's success was an uncanny knack of correctly picking the notoriously fickle San Diego breeze. Team New Zealand had developed a unique weather program, utilising sophisticated electronics and a vast practical knowledge of weather patterns that assisted the crew in preparing their pre-race strategy and paid big dividends for Blackmagic's crew.
Yeah, Mike, this is Shub. Just lit another one off. 282, 9.8, and that's within a couple of degrees of the instruments, over.
They were giving a lot of input on their. They actually used their eyes a lot, and and you had to have really experienced sailors and people that we would trust. That you'd say, okay, Mike Quill or Shuby or Jamie makes this decision. They say, well, look, the numbers aren't quite showing it right now, but the right-hand side looks to me really favoured. And so you'd have to say, okay, right, well, we're going to go with that. So quite often they were just calling it from their gut.
A combination of that weather information with Bob Rice, who is just a genius, really, and made meteorology, or the weather, the microclimate of weather in San Diego, very understandable by guys and the team that needed to know, that combination was unbeatable. It was fantastic.
Russell just steered the boat, is it? He worried about boat speed. If we said tack, he'd tack, you know. He just complete 100% trust in what we were doing, and he would just steer the boat and look at the boat speed, the numbers, and that was it. He'd be talking to the main sheet trimmer, Warwick, and Simon, jib trimming, or Scully downwind, and he'd be just worrying about boat speed. And I actually think that was one of the big reasons we were fast and always fast.
Good start. Yeah, we're well over.
Team New Zealand were always comfortable with their boat speed, and with NZL 38 retired, the faster NZL 32 continued the winning streak to go through the semi-finals unbeaten to face One Australia in the final of the Louis Vuitton Cup for Challenges. At the time, the victories may have appeared easy, but the crew of Black Magic were often struggling to control the boat as the design team pushed the design envelope in search of another fraction of boat speed.
Well, the designers pushed the foils under the water to the limits and past the limits. And I think if a lesser guy was steering the boat in a lot of the circumstances, we would have gotten a lot of trouble, especially in the semi-finals. We were struggling. We'd pushed the foils to the limits, probably past the limits, and we were having a lot of trouble controlling the boat. Well, Russell was, and it wasn't a technique thing. It was more of a, the foils just weren't up to the job that we were asking of him.
He had his hands full. I mean, he really did. But a couple of starts we mucked up, but most of the time we were really telling him where we had to be to the right of the boat or had to be to the left. And maybe the other camps didn't have, they weren't positive on where they were starting, and we were positive where we wanted to be. And we wanted Russell to get that end, no matter what.
I actually thought that at the same time I wasn't starting particularly well. I could have been doing better. However, I guess if you had the choice between winning the start or winning the finish, you'd take winning the finish.
But the day finally arrived when Black Magic didn't win the finish. Russell Coutts and his team just couldn't find a way round a determined Australian crew.
He's going to tack. Hold. Coming up. Trim on, I need some power on the pumps.
The loss of their first race on the water was a jolt back to reality and a reminder of the previous New Zealand campaigns that had stumbled in the Challenger finals.
It had a positive effect on everybody on board, Probably a few of the people that were ashore got a bit weak at the knees at the side of it, but it took a bit of a load off us because, it'd be nice to have gone through the whole event without losing a race, but in hindsight it was probably great that we lost the race, and it put us into another level that the next day we went out and raced them. We were totally confident and sure of how we were going to go about it, and I think it made losing that race against the Australians make it easier to beat the Americans in the end.
But there was another factor missing on that day, which quickly became a New Zealand phenomenon. The rest of the crew looking for those socks occasionally with a raised eyebrow, but they'll never knock it.
Well, the red socks just happened. People gave me a pair of bright red socks for Christmas, and I started wearing these on Black Magic. And when one starts to win, I think, well, I'm a bit loath to change. One gets more and more superstitious the more and more sailing one does at sea. And so I just kept them on, and they were for me and for nobody else, until the day that I wasn't on the boat. It wouldn't make any difference whether I was or wasn't on the boat, I'm sure, but people picked up on it. I think the Red Sox campaign really helped bring the country together. It's an easy way to show your support for something. They're bright, they're cheerful, they don't cost very much. You know that half the money is going to help the the boat come across the line first. You want to be on board that boat.
Whatever the reason, Team New Zealand recovered to dominate the last two races of the Challenger finals and win the Louis Vuitton Cup. Black Magic NZL 32 was the 29th Challenger for the America's Cup.
That's it, boys. Well done. Well done. Well done, Polly.
But the Louis Vuitton Cup was not the ultimate prize, instead a stepping stone to the main event, because the New Zealanders had always set their sights on winning the America's Cup. After the Challenger celebrations, the New Zealanders were quickly back out on the water again, relentlessly pursuing that extra fraction of boat speed to try and gain an edge for the America's Cup. It was during this period of intensive testing that Team New Zealand made their biggest performance gains, particularly in sail development.
They had a Spinnaker or a Jenica which wasn't performing at all well, and I know Mike Spanek and a couple of others said, look, could they have one of these sails? Because they had some good ideas. They thought what they used last time in the previous America's Cup, and just from their own general sailing experience and looking around at all the opposition, they could make the Spinnaker faster. You know, I'll give it a go and see what happens. You know, I don't think anyone's particularly interested. They didn't think it would make much difference. And these guys got to it, and the next day, that sail was the fastest sail we had by miles. Everyone's going, jeepers, creepers. Suddenly we've got this huge leap from being to the mediocre speed downwind. We're suddenly very fast.
The development was not limited to the sails. A racy paint job and new wings on Black Magic's keel was a further example of Kiwi ingenuity.
Some of the boys were making them out of plywood and carbon fibre in a traditional boat building way for $500. Because we had to. And suddenly they found, instead of having to wait for machine shops in California to 3 or 4 weeks of work, it's 3 or 4 days. We tried all sorts of different things, and we started to leap ahead.
While the Kiwis were making gains, the American defence effort had become embroiled in controversy. Of concern to Team New Zealand, the Americans' war ashore had little impact in the long run.
It probably had a little effect in terms of, you know, we knew this was coming and we tried to stop it happening, but I mean, it was going to happen. It was the obvious thing. It was within the rules that they could choose one of 3 boats in the finals of their regatta for the America's Cup, you know, and they went and did it. But, you know, in our team, I thought what was good is that we wanted to race Connor in the final with Kayard and all his team, you know, and we felt that if we didn't race them, we would have been cheated out of, you know, beating them and having nobody say, well, you didn't race the hardest group there was there. And so that was pretty nice for everybody in our group to be wanting to race the best that the States had to offer.
Confident with the performance of Black Magic, the New Zealanders had time to analyse the American defender's speed.
On paper, we knew we had a considerably faster boat than any of the American syndicates. But of course, you're always sceptical about believing that, particularly with the history New Zealand's had in the past. So we were always working very, very hard to I guess, get better and better and better, believing that the Americans would be better than what our analysis indicated.
While cautiously optimistic, the thoroughness of Team New Zealand's preparation meant they assumed nothing. The boat was ready, and so was the crew. As Black Magic left the dock for the first race of the 29th America's Cup, they soon came face to face with Dennis Connor, the man who stood between them and the America's Cup.
When we got into the middle of that
into that spectator fleet. You know, the crowd were going crazy in there and everything, and all of a sudden, okay, this is a little different from the last races that we've been doing, and that was a bit of adrenaline buzz.
Amongst the enthusiastic spectator fleet, there was marvellous support for Black Magic's crew as they engaged in the cut and thrust pre-start manoeuvring with Team Stars and Stripes.
You sort of had this feeling of excitement when you actually lined up off the start line and you're alongside them and you're thinking, well, who's going to be faster? You know, that was quite exciting. And you're sort of holding your breath, hoping that we were going to be faster.
We're coming down to 8, 6, 5, coming up to the start of race 1 of the 29th defence of the America's Cup, and it's Team New Zealand in the windward position, up by the committee boat, down to Leeuwin ahead. It is Young America out by the pin.
When we started, and I thought we got the side we wanted the right of them, and we were just to weather of them, and I thought, oh, well, we're going to be out of here soon because they're going to pinch up underneath us and we're going to be going out, but I thought, well, no problem, we're going to be going the way we wanted to go. The only thing that was a bit of a concern to me, we were actually quite high at that stage. Then I looked under the boom, I saw them there, I thought, and then we carried on for 5 minutes. I looked, oh, we go pretty quick here. I thought, this is nice. This is nice. Turned around to Russ, I said, we're going okay.
So here we come,
smack right on top of them,
to the first cross of race 1 of America's Cup 95.
Wait 1.
And it is Young America that has made the first move. The Stars and Stripes crew are on port.
He'll go now.
They're on port. So here goes New Zealand, going through the eye of the wind and they're tacking right in their fights.
We went around the top mark and they came into us pretty dramatically, and we had those spinnaker pole problems, so we thought, oh Jesus, they look pretty quick downwind. As it turned out, further on through the race, we looked like our speed was pretty even, and so by the end of the day we felt fairly confident and encouraged.
And there's the gun. And Russell Coots and his team have beaten Team Stars and Stripes aboard Young America in race 1 of the America's Cup. After race 1, the sight of Black Magic ahead of Team Stars and Stripes was to become the standard for Dennis Connor's team in races 2 and 3, as the New Zealanders continued to extend their advantage with an impressive combination of flawless crew work and superior boat speed. Ferocious tacking duel now. It's a backstreet brawl.
Well, Tom, it's 3-zip.
So coming down to the line.
Okay, ready? Driving.
So going through the jibe, trying all the way right to the finish. Team New Zealand, NZL 32, gets the gun, and they have beaten Young America for the 3rd successive time.
When you're 3 up, it starts getting pretty hard for them. And, you know, we were always confident, but we knew that the worst thing you could do is get confident, because then if you get confident, you don't do that extra boat check, you don't run over the rig as well, you don't look at the sails, you don't keep on talking on how you could do things better and keep on improving. So we never really said, or we tried not to even think that we'd won the event until we'd actually finished.
The Americans obviously agreed and came out fighting in race 4 to lead the Kiwis at the first cross.
Okay, Team New Zealand behind. Pressure time. But they're behind. Braking left.
This is staggering from Team New Zealand. Behind at the first cross, but again that power rips them through.
Now what? Yeah, now what? That's a very good call. Now what?
So coming down to take the gun in race number 4, Team New Zealand are now just one win away from winning the greatest prize in sailing, international sport's oldest prize, and take the America's Cup from the United States for only the second time in 144 years. Despite the excitement and anticipation, there was still one more race to win before Team New Zealand could make it black to the future.
It was really business as usual, and everybody went about their tasks and the boat preparation, so nobody ever allowed themselves any sort of, you know, thinking or feeling that, you know, this is it, this is the day we're going to win the America's Cup, which was a little bit strange, you know, because yeah, we were certainly looking pretty strong there. And I know that, you know, back home that Sunday morning there was champagne breakfast throughout the country. It would have been a bad one to lose as far as that was concerned.
It's going to be a split tack start. It is Black Magic NZL 32 on starboard going to the pin end. Meanwhile it is Young America coming up to the committee boat, the gun now. And the Americans are up by the committee boat. They're on port, moving out to the right. Meanwhile the New Zealanders split tack start on starboard, out to the left.
So the first cross has New Zealand lee bowing on Team Stars and Stripes. So again, the pressure goes on Paul Kayard and his crew. Young America have blown a halyard right now. This is very good for Team New Zealand.
Haney, what are you doing? Oh, we're going to put the same thing on. It's the halyard.
This is it, you guys. You enjoy it.
Personally, I was struggling to hold the excitement back because I wanted to start goofing around a little bit probably halfway through the race when I felt that we had there. But, you know, we had to make sure that that was going to be the last race of the event and finish it.
It wasn't until we got within about, I don't know, half a mile of the final finish line, people dared speak. They started to get a sort of a twitter on excitement. And away it went, of course. They couldn't control themselves.
The America's Cup is now New Zealand's Cup, and for only the second time in 144 years, the most illustrious and elusive of prizes in sailing, international sport's oldest prize, leaves the United States, this time to a different down under, New Zealand!
That's it.
At the end, you could see that we were totally, we could let it all out and certainly enjoy the whole moment, you know. And as far as enjoying a regatta, you know, it was most enjoyable right from the very beginning. And those last 5 races were just fantastic for our whole team. You know, we all enjoyed it completely, and just finishing it and pulling outside the boat in San Diego Yacht Club, and that all part of it was a very magical part of our lives.
I think everyone saw on the television with the celebrations afterwards that just how excited everyone was and how elated. I think just the adrenaline and obviously the Moët champagne was just running through our bloodstreams at 1,000,000 miles an hour. And I think, you know, that was just the greatest day in all our lives, definitely my life, and I don't think we'll ever forget it.
It was good, you know. I can remember looking around at the stage and just looking at the individuals and picking out, you know, some certain things that each of them had contributed just in my own brain, you know. So there we were standing on the dock. There wasn't many of us. It was a small team in America's Cup terms. We hadn't spent a lot of money in America's Cup terms, but as a team we'd made the right decisions, and I think you know, that was a great moment there when you finally realised that we'd won the thing.
Thank you very much for coming. For the second time in 144 years, the Cup will leave America. Congratulations to Team New Zealand, the winner of the Louis Vuitton Cup. Thank you very much.
Relaxed at last, Blake was enjoying the party.
I've
not really fit to tell you anything right now.
We got it!
Here we are. Make away. Come on, you big show pony, this way.
Let's go. We're off. We've got it. We're out of here. We got you. Plug in it. No wonder the champagne. No wonder the champagne didn't go very far. I know. It's only about that deep. We'll have to make a few modifications. We'll have to get Roy. Hey, Pete.
The biggest thrill, I guess, is to be able to say we did it. When a lot of people would have said, you know, you're never going to do it, it's impossible. Bullshit. It's not impossible at all. You can make any dream happen if you work away at it enough.
At Los Angeles Airport, Team New Zealand was given a special farewell before boarding a charter flight for the long trip home. And Craig Monk got to celebrate his birthday at 30,000 feet.
Happy birthday to you.
Everybody keeps coming up and telling us, I don't think you have any idea how big it's going to be at home. It's imagined pretty huge. Shout, like a crowd chanting Gandhi, perhaps, maybe bigger.
As they flew into a new day, the team got their first glimpse of the country they'd been sailing for. The spectacular welcome to Auckland was a sign of things to come.
Meaty will be dissolved. Has Meaty started crying yet?
After nearly a decade of trying, finally, the America's Cup was in New Zealand. It was party time. For Team New Zealand, the welcome home was a once-in-a-lifetime experience.
I'm waving. I'm working with you. You're the worst wave. More waves than the Southern Ocean, mate.
The big part was actually coming in from the airport on the bus and having the streets lined with all the old people out of rest homes and the schools closing down, all the kids coming out, and it was huge. It was really, I couldn't believe it. Then we got into, I thought, okay, we're going to go up Queen Street. Queen Street's going to be lined, and we're going to get a ticker tape parade. Great. And yet you started off around the corner and you're coming up into Queen Street, all the people, and they're up this side, up the streets, and hanging out of buildings, and I thought, oh, this is huge. Couldn't believe it. And then you're Wellington's the same, and Christchurch, and Dunedin. Population, I think, is 130,000, and 90,000, I believe, turned out for the parade. I thought, this is just great.
I knew it'd be something special down here.
It was just incredible. I just couldn't believe that the people, you know, like all sorts of people who were just following the thing right from day one, and we're just so moved by the whole thing. And, yeah, it was incredible, really.
It was quite sort of awesome, really. You know, never been sort of subject to that kind of devotion from people. It was very, very humbling.
You know, to end it in this way, to actually have Connor in the final and put him out of his misery and then bring the event to New Zealand, I mean, it was mind-blowing. And to know that been such a big event here, and to see the people and the young kids to the old people that have got behind it, it was just humbling, really.
We did have country on board, and the boys felt it. They really, really did. So coming home, well, and that's something that no one is ever going to forget. And I would suggest that they're never going to experience it ever again. It was a once-off.